Hey, welcome back to my shop. Today we got a fun little project. This I'm calling it a picnic caddy or a camping caddy. The original one of these that I built was made out of scrap pallet material and it was quite popular, and I've made several since then. So I thought it'd be fun to kind of walk you through the process. This comes off and you put a roll of paper towels up there and the little dividers inside. You could put silverware, you could put condiments, you could put, I don't know, playing cards, whatever you wanted to sit in the middle of your table. You probably could even put succulents or plants in there if you wanted to. Don't recommend it, but you could. And it's kind of a beginner level project, so right up my alley. You really would only need maybe a jigsaw or handsaw and a drill to complete this project. So stay tuned, it's going to be fun. For today's project, we're going to be using a pine 1x8 and a pine 1x6. I have been using cedar fence pickets and planing them down nice and smooth. But in order to get the 7.5 inch wide sides and bottom that I need, I have to glue two of these together to make a panel. And I wanted to try the pine because this one I want to stain with a kind of a gray or aged barrel stain to see how that turns out. So I'm going to start by just cutting these to a little bit longer than I need them so that it makes it a little easier to go through the planer before we cut them to length and then start cutting in all the joinery. So the sides are going to be 15 inches tall for the final cut. So I'm going to cut these at 16. That way I can, after I run them through the planer, I can make sure the ends are nice and squared on my table saw. So I need two at 16. The bottom of it is going to be 14 inches wide, which is just wide enough for the paper towel roll to fit on the dowel. So I'm going to cut that at 15 inches, and then I've got to cut two of the 1x6s for the actual sides, and they're going to be cut at the same 15 inches. So I'm just going to rough cut them here on the miter saw, run them through the planer, and then we'll cut them to length on the table saw. I got my sides, bottom, and the tall sides already all milled down to 1/2 inch. I forgot that I needed an extra 16-inch long piece cut down to 1 inch wide strips and milled to 1/2 inch so that I could glue those together to make a 1 inch by 1 inch blank to turn the handle out of. So I'm going to go mill this down real quick, and then I'm going to rip it down to 1 inch wide strips on the table saw before I take my fence off, because once I take it off, we're going to put the sled on here, and then the rest of it will be done with the sled, and I don't want to have to swap back and forth. So mill this down, rip it down to 1 inch, and then we'll go to the sled and do all the joinery. Got the sled on the table saw. I'm ready to cut the sides to length. I'm going to use some double-sided tape to stick these together, the two tall sides and the two short sides, stick those together so that whenever I cut them to length, they're the exact same size, but more so whenever I start cutting the joinery and the big box joints in with a dado stack, it'll all line up together. So once I stick these together, they're going to be together for most of the cuts. I won't take them apart again until I've got to drill the hole in the handle. So get them taped together. Cut to length, 15 inches tall on the tall sides. These are going to be 14 inches long. The bottom is going to be 14 inches long as well. I went ahead and put my dado stack in here. My little job site table saw will only accommodate about a 1/4 inch dado. I wish I could go wider, it would take less time, but until I get a new table saw, I've got to work with what I've got. This is my dado sled, and I've screwed a sacrificial piece on here. I'm going to set the height of the blade to the thickness of my material, which is 1/2 inch, just a hair above, a 32nd above or so. And I'll make a pass through, and this is just to help prevent the wood from tearing out so much. Then I'm going to run through it a couple of times, moving over in order to hog out all the material in the wide box joints that I'm going to cut. All right, so laying these out, these are going to be my short sides, and they're going to be flush with the bottom of the tall side. So it should be right at 5.5 inches because I didn't mill anything off of these. 5 7/16. So I'll just mark it right here. And I'm going to split that in half. I want about a 2-inch dado or 2-inch box joint there. So I'll take half of that, 2 3/4, and then 1 inch on each side of that would be here and here. So 1 3/4 and 3 3/4. So I'll be able to set a stop on my sled, and I can cut this whole side out here. Then I can flip it over and I can cut the whole side out here. My sled's not really long enough to put a stop on both ends. I may try to rig something up just to make it a little more accurate. But once I cut these this way, then I can turn these on their ends and I can cut the opposite pieces out. So I want to keep, I want these inset inside of the tall sides. So the waste material is going to be on each side of this and in the middle here. And that'll create a big box joint. So I'll finish laying these out, get it set up on the sled to cut, and then we'll do some cutting. So funny story, the reason why that I put these marks on here is so that I know that's my waist area. But I wound up cutting out the part I wanted to keep anyway. So, cut another piece, I've got to mill it down, then I'll make sure that I cut those right pieces out this time. Okay, got all my big box joints cut. Other than on this piece, I'm going to swap back in a little bit to a regular table saw and finish cutting that out. It'll just be a nice, a smoother cut than having to use that dado stack back and forth a whole bunch of times. I got to clean it up a little bit. Did have a little bit of tear out on it. So that soft pine had some tear out on it, but I think that'll clean up okay. The next thing I want to do before I take the dado stack off is I want to plow some 1/4 inch dados in here. On each side, so that once I put it together, I can have 1/4 inch dividers that can be removed if whoever gets it wants to take it out and have just one long box, or just move them around and reconfigure it. So gonna put it at maybe a 1/8 inch depth, set the stop block on the miter here, and go ahead and cut those. Then I can take that off and put my regular blade back on it. All my pieces cut. I do have to do some sanding on it, clean up some of this tear out. But I went ahead and took these two pieces apart so I could dry fit it, make sure there wasn't anything that I was going to have to clean up. I'll use a blue tape to tape them back together to take them to the bandsaw and cut out the kind of pointed part where the handle goes. But gonna do a quick dry fit, give them all a sand with 220 grit just to smooth it out a little bit. got it cut on the bandsaw, and I went ahead and drilled my hole. This is a 1-inch Forstner bit, drilled a 1-inch hole. Drilled almost all the way through and then flipped it over and finished drilling out this side. And I cut it almost to the line, but I'm gonna sand it to that line to make sure I get a nice smooth finish, knock out all that bandsaw blade marks. Once you finish this, then we get to assemble it. Ready to start glue up. I'm going to use some Titebond 3 or Titebond Ultimate, but I'm only going to use a very little bit because I don't want any squeeze out at all. The stain won't stick to it. And some 18 gauge brad nails. I have to be very careful with this because I am dealing with 1/2 inch thick material, and I don't want to shoot one of those brad nails where it would come out on the face. So I have to be really careful. So glue, clamps, brad nails, put it together, let it dry, then I can stain it. Alright, so I got my box. The glue is all dried. I've sanded it down a little bit. I cut and planed down some little, they're probably 3/16 of an inch, a little smaller than a quarter. They can slide into the grooves that we cut. So they can be removable compartment trays in there. If someone wants to use the whole thing, they can pull them out. Next up, the two pieces I glued together yesterday, 2 1/2 inch by 1 inch pieces. These are going to be the handle. They're going to go in this hole, but I have to turn them down round. Now, the previous ones that I made, I put linch pins on each end. This time I think I'm going to take my router with probably a 3/8 round over and put some stop blocks and stop it to where the very end of it, it doesn't turn it down to where it won't fit through the hole. And then I can put the linch pin on the other, and then when they go to change the paper towels, you just pull it out this way, put it on there, push it back, and then the head of it won't go through the hole. So next up is going to be going over to the drill press, drilling a 1/4 inch hole for this linch pin, 3/4 of an inch from this end, and then we'll take it to the router table and turn it down into a octagon. I got my handle finished sanded down. I started out with a 3/8 round over bit and then moved up to a 1/2 inch round over bit just so I wouldn't be taking off a ton of material. I left the end of it. I stopped the round over right here in order to make a little knob on the end of it. And then the way that it works is it presses in here and you put your roll of paper towels on it. And you have a linch pin right here that goes in the hole. Snap it close, it can't come out. Little removable dividers in here. They work out pretty well. So all I've got left to do is stain it. I'm going to be using this aged barrel. I used it on another project. I like the way that it looked. So gonna see how it turns out once I stain it and then put a coat of polyurethane on it and see what it looks like. All right, here it is, finished product. Turned out pretty nice. I kind of like the aged barrel stain. Gonna mess around with it a little bit, try to maybe thin it out, make it a little bit lighter next time. But works out great. Has the removable dividers in here. It worked fine. The handle comes off. Reload with paper towels. You put your silverware or your condiments or whatever in here, sit it on your table. It can be used outside with the polyurethane coating on it, but not left outside because pine will hold up well outside. So if you like it, hit the like button, subscribe, check out our website, creatorsoftheLostArt.com. Pick up some of Mandy's wonderful homeopathic and natural tinctures. Order some woodwork, order one of these things. I don't mind making them, kind of fun. So thanks for watching, guys. Shut up, pigs.